What's going on, everybody? I'm joined by Jess today to talk about the 5 songs and artists that are in the running to represent Iceland at this year's Eurovision Song Contest in Turin. We've seen 2 semifinals already, which have narrowed the 10 songs down to 5, and we're going to be sharing our thoughts on who we think could be winning Songvakeppnin and how they might be doing at Eurovision. So let's get into it. Iceland, of course, is coming off of a pretty good run. Thinking back to 2019 when they got themselves back in the final with Hækkandi and also back into the top 10. And then we had the 2 years of Daði Freyr, who not only was a big hit and got a good score at Eurovision, but also a viral sensation in 2020. So looking at the songs that we have this year, are we expecting something along those lines? What do you think?
So the songs that we have in the final this year, I think that they are all good songs. And I think they all have their own strengths and their own merits. But personally, I don't see any of these songs quite matching the success of Daði Freyr or Hækkandi in 2019. But that's obviously not to say that they're not good songs. I do think that Iceland could get a decent result with any of the songs that they have, but I don't see them being big, huge viral hits like we've seen before.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also with those entries that we've talked about, they are really unique in their many different ways, right? And you're not going to get that every time. So I also don't feel like it's kind of Iceland's responsibility to give that to us again and again and again. But with that said, I do see a lot of songs here that are considerably more low-key, and it's nice to see that kind of change up in energy. I think that there is certainly potential here. So let's get into our first entry. So Katla has got one of the ballads that we see in this selection, definitely one that is leaving an impression on a lot of people. I want to know, what do you think about her song?
So I think out of kind of the 2 solo ballads that we have in this year's final, I would say Katla's is probably the stronger song in my opinion. At the beginning, to me, it kind of starts off almost a bit mysterious and quite dark. And then suddenly we just get these drums coming in, this big beat, and we've got all these kind of red and black lights on the stage, which for me was very visually appealing. Her vocals live were incredible, and there was a lot of kind of power and epicness, if that's even a word, on the stage. And I do think that that's really going to help the song to stand out amongst this competition. And if this were to be the winner and go to Eurovision, I think all of those things are going to work in Katla's favour.
I agree with a lot of the things that you said as far as it really standing out for a number of reasons, both like performance-wise and the visuals. I really, really like the use of dark lighting and shadows and the colors that they have, the black, green, and red. And the use of mirrors, I think, is also very effective. There is something that I find really appealing about being able to, like make space with mirrors and to change the setting just by using some reflections. I do feel like the music itself, it's quite familiar territory for Eurovision, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's hard to get like super excited about it for that reason, but I still appreciate it. I think that the performance really shines in this, and also her look too is very distinctive. It is also the song that when watching recaps seems to have that kind of winner quality to it that you can't really describe. Just, it just seems like, yes, this is the choice. If this were to go to Eurovision, how well do you think it could do?
I think this song could definitely qualify to the final, but I think in the final they'd probably be looking sort of mid-table from at least 15th to 20th perhaps.
Yeah, and I feel the same way too for the reasons that I mentioned before, the reason that it is kind of familiar territory for Eurovision. And I think that the audience that has come back to Eurovision so many times will kind of feel that too. But still, like a respectable entry. I'm curious about how the Songvakeppnin audience will respond to the English version, because I believe that's the one that she's going to be putting forward. So yeah, I mean, I think that we can definitely consider this a contender. So here we have the Daughters of Reykjavík serving us a song with a lot of attitude, definitely a lot of Eurofan appeal here. Jess, I want to know what you think of it.
I was definitely not expecting this to come out of Iceland, I'll tell you that. This one, I think, could be a real standout in terms of the song, the style of the song, the staging, the outfits, all of these kind of women together. It's just something very different that you would never expect to see. Yeah, it's this kind of really almost kind of crazy, but in a good way, crazy kind of dancey, poppy, hip-hop kind of tune with this kind of, empowering women singing about, I don't know what they're singing about actually, but, they seem to be really into it, really passionate. And the staging, it's a bit of a hot mess, I'll be honest, but in a good way, I would say. Having a motorbike come in on stage, this big kind of round ball that I don't quite understand, it's kind of not working, but at the same time, it's drawing me in and it's making me want to listen and to stay tuned into the end and to know more about it. And for that reason, I think it's probably going to be one of the contenders to win on Saturday.
Potentially, yeah. And you touched on a lot of things, the craziness of it, certainly. They're definitely putting a big effort there to not be forgotten. And I don't think that anybody is going to be forgetting about this performance for the way that it looks. Also, the presence that they have. And while I also don't totally understand what they're talking about, you do pick up on a few English words in there. They're even saying like, bad bitch, Virgin Mary, I'm the whore. Like, there's not a lot of subtlety to that. But I kind of think of this, to borrow a word from Dominic, as Eurobait, in the sense that like this, it seems like it's made for Eurovision, and the craziness of it all. You also mentioned the motorbike that comes out, which it definitely caught me by surprise. But that's the kind of thing. It's the kind of card you pull out when you're making something for Eurovision. I'm a little bit skeptical about this being the choice for that reason, but I see the appeal. I see this as, something that can be really fun. And we have seen a lot of songs at Eurovision in the past that have tapped into female empowerment. And that's at least the sense that I get from what I can pick up from the song. If this were to go to Eurovision, what do you think how far do you think this can go?
So this, for me, would be definitely more of a televote song rather than a jury song. If they were to kind of work on their staging and to get some kind of, maybe make it less chaotic and have some more kind of unity with it, then I could see this qualifying to the final and actually being quite a big hit with the televoters, possibly top 10 with the televoters. But I think juries would let this song down. Like musically, it's quite simple, I would say. Not that that's a bad thing, because sometimes simple music works, and absolutely, like as far as creating chaos on stage, then yeah, sometimes there's an orchestrated chaos, organized chaos as they call it, that can really work. I don't necessarily know if this could go as far as the top 10, maybe top 10 televote, but then I do think that the jury score would hold it back. And if this were to get into the final, I think that it would probably be kind of middle of the right hand side of the scoreboard, maybe a little bit higher than that, maybe a little bit further if they were to have a bit of a different approach to the staging that just makes it a little bit more tight and not just about the chaos. So Stefán is giving us another ballad performed by a soloist, of course, this time a male performer. Jess, tell me what you think of this one. I like the song, but I don't love it. For me, this is a very kind of average, middle of the road pop ballad. And for me, I do feel it's quite forgettable. His performance in the semi-final was really great, probably some of the best vocals we heard. But for me, the song just doesn't really go anywhere. I don't really want to use the word boring, but it's not exciting me enough. It's repetitive as well, like the chorus especially. It's just repeated quite often, and towards the end of the song, for me, I'm just kind of feeling a little bit like, okay, I've heard this chorus a million times before, which is a shame because I want to like this song more than I do, but it's just not really grabbing my attention.
So for me, I actually think that this is one of the best choruses that we have, because after having listened to all the songs, this is the one that really kind of stands out in my mind the most. I agree with what you said about the vocals, because he's certainly one of the best performers that we have. I also really like the harmonies that we get with the backing track as well. I suppose that because it is lacking the visual impact that Katla's song has, that maybe this won't reach quite as many people, but I still would like to think that this could be a good choice for Iceland, especially because, I don't know, personally, I'm a big sucker for soaring vocals, and I think that that's one of the reasons why the song stands out to me quite as much. Maybe it's not the same for other viewers, but I don't know, like if this were to go to Eurovision, do you think that it would have a chance of qualification?
I think it would struggle to qualify, in my opinion. I think a song like this would probably have more jury appeal than televote appeal, and I feel like they'd be relying on the juries to get them in the top 10 in the semi-final to qualify. But with so many other strong contenders around them, I feel like a song like this would struggle to stand out.
I guess one thing that can be said is that so far we are seeing a lot of solo male ballads, and each of them have something different about them, but it could mean that they might cancel each other out if they're too close to one another. Of course, the producers are going to do what they can to space them out, but definitely a potential threat to really the qualification of any of them. I would say that if they do go with Stefán, I actually prefer the Icelandic version. And it's not even that I dislike the English version, but I just feel like there's a little bit of magic to hearing it in Icelandic. Obviously, I don't speak Icelandic, but the sound of the lyrics just seems to fit the song a little bit more. I don't know, I am quite liking this one. I guess we'll have to see, maybe it could at least make it to the final two, because that's how the selection works. I'd like to believe that this song could at least get to that level, so we'll have to see. So here we have our only trio in the selection, and of course trios are not quite a typical thing that we see when it comes to Eurovision in general, but they're also, I believe, the only ones that are going to be singing their song entirely in Icelandic, because they don't have an English version of it. Jess, tell me what you think of this one.
So of the finalists, this one is actually my favorite.
Okay.
I love this song so much, and I think what I love about it is just that it's a very kind of stripped back, laid back kind of, I wrote the word ethereal down. I don't know if that really fits in, but this kind of ethereal kind of country folk song going on. For me, that kind of draws me into the song and into the staging. And it's just kind of 3 minutes where I can just sit back and relax, and it's nothing that's too kind of in your face. It's not too loud or too colourful. It's just, perfect in that sense. The staging was a bit bland in my opinion. And maybe if they were to go to Eurovision, I'd like to see something more happening on stage, maybe more graphics, something different with the lighting and the colours. But overall, it's a very wonderful performance in my opinion, and very captivating.
This one has definitely struck my curiosity the most, and there are certain details that I like about it. I also like the ethereal vibe that it has, and I'm also a big fan of folk harmonies, and they harmonize really, really well. I kind of disagree with you about the staging, because yes, it's quite simple, but even the way that they're positioned, I think works pretty well, because when you're looking at them from directly from the front, there's this nice sloping line from the one singer on the very right down to the drummer on the left. They're also positioned in a bit of a diagonal line so that there's a bit of different types of depth when you're looking at them from different angles. I suppose that after a certain period of time, you are kind of wanting it to develop a little bit more. So I can see that side of it, but I don't know. I appreciate just kind of how relaxing this is. It would be a really big question as far as how this would do at Eurovision, because it's very against the ideas that we have of Eurovision music. What do you think this could do at Eurovision? I
like to think that this would qualify, just because at the moment we don't really have anything like this in this year's contest. I mean, I guess the closest we have is Stefán from Estonia with his kind of country pop, just because they're both kind of country vibe. I don't know. I think because the song is very different to everything else, that's going to help it stand out. So then in turn, that's going to help it to qualify and get a decent result.
Yeah, and I think of it as the way that we thought of Hooverphonic last year, and how, at least I don't know about you, but I was pretty confident that it was going to qualify pretty early on, because that semifinal was just so energetic and so over the top and so much pop that you needed a bit of a change up, as far as I felt. And I mean, in some ways I was right, because it qualified. It was mostly because of the jury support, but I still think that it was a deserved qualification and a certain moment. So if this is going to bring that kind of moment to Eurovision, then absolutely. And I really like the uniqueness of it too. This is quite similar to a lot of the adult contemporary music that we would hear in Canada. So yeah, I would be very happy with this personally. So on to our last entry here. Jess, what do you think about this one?
To be honest with you, it's not one of my favorites, and I'm not loving the song. Upon first listen to the song in the semi-final, I was a little bit confused, because at the beginning it kind of sounds like you're going to get this almost slightly kind of jazzy number going on with the piano and the female singer. But then as we go into the chorus, it kind of almost turns into this kind of cheesy pop song, is how I would describe it. The chorus is very, very catchy. I'm still singing it in my head now, which is rather annoying. It's not really like very standout in my opinion. I think it's a very kind of repetitive, middle of the road song. The chorus is very repetitive. It just goes on, and it's not one that really sticks out in my mind personally. But in terms of kind of them performing on stage, they were great, I thought, but the song does nothing for me.
I see what you're saying. There are certain things I appreciate about it. Like it does feel like, you know, a really kind of classic pop song from the 60s or 70s, especially the strings that they have in there really add to that feeling. And there is a likable quality to it. But I agree that it kind of lacks a moment. It lacks like a climax or anything. It's all quite, you know, level. And the repetitiveness of the chorus, I think, contributes to that as well. Because this is the jury wildcard, I think it's kind of hard to think of it as a potential to even get to that final two to begin with. I suppose that the one thing that could change that as a possibility is if the audience responds to the English version of the song different than the Icelandic version. So what do you think about that?
So I have heard the English version, but I think I would say that I prefer the Icelandic version. I think it comes across better in the native language than in English, but it, you know, like you said, it's possible that switching the language could change their fortunes around.
Yeah, and I mean, we should also anticipate that changes can be made. You know, maybe there will be a wow moment. Maybe they'll decide to, you know, amp up the vocals a little bit more. I mean, ultimately, I would say that it's a pretty solid vocal performance. I think that we would both agree that really what holds it back is the song, that it is lacking, you know, that special quality that says, you know, yes, this should be for Eurovision. Okay, so now that we've talked about all 5 entries, we do have to choose winners. So Jess, who do you think should represent Iceland?
The song that all the people who I would like to see represent Iceland is Sigga, Betta and Elín, just purely because their song is my favourite, and I do think it is one of the stronger songs of the final. And I would love to see this kind of genre, this style, represented in Eurovision.
I agree with you in the sense that there is something unique about it that seems to say that this could win. As I mentioned before, I also think that Katla has that as well. It is a little bit more typical of what we'd expect for Eurovision, so that's why I kind of see it going more in her favor, but I do think that the uniqueness of Sigga, Betta and Elín could at least, you know, bring a different flavor to Eurovision. I also see it as being another one of those really divisive entries, and there seems to be a lot of divisive entries this year. Do you think that might be the case for them?
Oh yeah, I think with the style of the song, it's either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. You know, it's not like your typical kind of Europop that tends to get a lot of love. It's something that either you'll connect to or you'll think this is boring or this is not me. So it would be an interesting choice for Iceland if they were to choose it, definitely.
Yeah, and if one thing can be said about Iceland in the last few years is that they've always been unique and they've always been able to stand out. So, you know, that I think would be a way to keep that going rather than, you know, playing into the kind of typical Eurovision styles. So that's what we think. What do you think about Songvakeppnin and the 5 finalists? Who would you like to see represent Iceland, and do you agree with our choices? Let us know in the comments. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Eurovox because we have been we have been covering all the national selections. We're almost done with them. We almost have all 40 of our songs for Eurovision 2022, and we'd love to know what you have to say about the other ones that we haven't talked about yet. Don't forget to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you, Jess. We will see you on the next one. Take care.
Bye.